Okay, in the interest of not being here all night, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order at 7:01 PM. Just move it right along. So, yes, we did. If you couldn't hear, Michael asked if we had enough for a quorum, which we do, because if you count those of us here plus who's, on Zoom, we do. So I hope everyone read the minutes that were sent earlier. I just need someone to motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Okay. Can you hear Jerry, Bethany?
No, Jerry, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
A little better.
Use your outdoor voice.
Outdoor.
Your outdoor
Can you hear
voice.
me now?
Yes.
There you go. That's good.
All right.
He seconded.
Oh, thank you.
So our first order of business is we have to vote on Faith's resignation from the commission. I guess the other commission members have to agree to take it. So if someone would like to put that into a motion,
I'll make the motion to accept Faith Nealon's resignation from the commission effective as of today.
second,
Second.
okay. It was motioned by Jerry Ford and seconded by Doug Carson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passed. Our next order of business is to vote Neil McDowell, who had the next highest votes on the public ballot, into the position to officially become a commission member replacing Faith.
So moved.
Okay. Doug made the motion.
Second.
It was actually seconded by Michael Anderson,
Oh.
who's not using his outdoor voice. So all in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? I don't think I said that the first time, but motion carried. And the next order of business, we need someone to take over the social media spot. Any volunteers? Wow, look at everybody jumping at that.
I can do that. I can do that.
Bless your heart, thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten.
You would just need to ask Faith
I'll just get in touch with Faith and get
to
the
relinquish
passwords.
control of the page.
yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
once that's in the minutes, so it is written, so it shall be. Okay, we may now open up our meeting to our guests who so graciously gave up their evening. I was hoping to see more people from the community, but that's okay. It'll be recorded and posted for them to watch. We have Mayor George Quay, the City Controller Jerry Ford, and Kevin Kunzelman in charge of accounts and finance with us this evening. And if they would each use their outdoor voices and take turns just explaining what it is they do in the capacity of their job for the city. Doesn't matter who goes first.
Right, this is Jerry Ford, City Controller. The main, I guess the job title is really describe what a city controller is. Basically, a city controller is an internal auditor. Those that have been in the business world, internal auditors work within the company. You have external auditors that are independent from the company, come in and do it. The main responsibility is the controllers to countersign all warrants, which means all checks to make sure that verify that they're a legal expense for the organization. City controller can also do audits per request of council. And typically in the third class city codes, it says that the city controller should do the year-end financial statements and do the audit. But subsequent to the original third class city code, they added stipulation the council may elect to have an independent external auditor or CPA, which council has done for many years. And also the bonding company is also required that as well.
Okay. Thank you. Next.
Hello, how you guys doing? as a mayor, I kind of do everything. I kind of equate it and I tried to figure out how I could explain this. It's kind of like being the head coach on a football team. And then I've got my people. I mean, Mick Jones is a quarterback. He and I work together along with Paula and, you know, the different people. Kevin would be like one of the line coaches or the offensive coach. And he would work with the people, you know, in his area. Mick would be over all those different people. We kind of, between us, work on decisions about direction, policy, that kind of stuff. We delve in to some extent with now more than ever with Kevin in the financial direction of the city. In a normal day, I come in 2 days a week. I come in on Tuesdays and Thursdays, usually from 9 in the morning till 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Normal day, I would come in. I'm the head of the police department. I come in and meet with my police chief, and we talk for usually an hour, hour and a half about what's going on, their direction, what we've done. We had a great day today, by the way. But generally, I'll leave there, come up and meet with Mr. Jones and Paula. And during that period, people like Jerry Ford come in, Kevin comes in, Chief Stowe comes in from the code department, fire department, public safety. And we kind of go through Joe from down at the water pollution control comes in and out constantly. And, you know, we always talk and figure out what's going on. Where are you? What direction are we taking? It's a nice working relationship. It's almost like symbiotic. We kind of all play off one another. But, you know, that's kind of what I do. When I came in as the mayor, I asked Carl Both, well, what's the mayor doing? He goes, you'll figure it out. So I'm still trying to figure it out, but it's a lot.
Thank you.
Mr. Carson?
That's right.
Anybody got any questions? I'm more than happy to answer them.
I think he's saving it up till Kevin says what he does.
No, I hope you
So as a member of council, you have 4 positions that must be filled. And this year I was appointed to take over accounts and finance. Accounts and finance director is in charge of all accounts and finances of the city to oversee the budgets are being implemented, that the bills, whenever they get paid, you know, I review each bill, every check that goes out of the city to make sure that it's a legitimate bill. I am one of the people that can sign authorizing for the checks on the bank accounts and stuff like that. Also, as council finance director, I am also in charge of the administration department, which would be technically over Mick and Paula. I assist with budgets. By virtue of office on the bond committee that we have established, and on the finance committee. And like I said, I help with the budgets, do a performance to see how close we are to the budget midway through the year, quarterly, monthly, stuff like that.
Thank you. We'll now open it up to what should be the public for questions, but if there are any questions. Waiting for Doug to go first.
All right, here I go.
There you
So-
go.
So the first one I want to ask to all 3 of you, and this is just what I want to ask. You have all been involved in the home rule. Jerry's on the committee. Kevin, it was kind of your idea to get it going. George, I know you've been keeping abreast of what's going on. So I want each of you in 3 minutes or less, so that you each get at least 3 minutes or less, not 3 minutes for all 3 of you, but 3 minutes or less. What would you like to see the Home Rule Charter Committee looking at in terms of writing up a home rule charter? What are the things that you think we should be looking at? And let's go ahead, since Jerry's on the committee, let's go with Kevin, then George, then Jerry.
So as far as the financial end of it, it's very important for a couple of things. If we look at the financial system that we're in, not to point fingers at anybody. Prior to Mick taking over as city manager, whenever he took over city manager, he was man enough to step up and say that he did not have a great grasp of the financial end of it. Prior to that, the budgets were paper budgets. They were just make-believe, and the city manager at that time did the budgets and really didn't care. But if you're looking at as a business-wise, coming in as a business person, if we look at any business that is a budget of about $7.7 to $8 million a year, you would not have somebody as a part-time accountant coming in 3 days a week to oversee that. I think it's critical that a financial individual be here full-time, that looks at this budget, looks at the bills, that can give performance reports, weekly to the department heads, and that's what's a critical part of that. Treasurer's office in the past was just money in, money out. That's all they cared about. They collected the money, they spent the money. There was no cash flow analysis or anything like that. So like I said, the financial individual must be put into place. And I don't think that a city manager should have as much power under the financial things as they did in years past, because that's kind of where I'm at as to where we are today with the financial situation. Of course, as a finance individual, if we're looking to fill the hole in the budget, the earned income tax increase is very is something that needs to be explored to raise that. Our tax base, as Ms. Grass has pointed out in many of her reports, the tax base is pretty flat and continues to go down. We don't see much growth in property tax increases. We don't have a lot of growth. Our tax collection is down, but our hands are kind of tied with the county. We have to turn it over to them right now. And, they collect it when they collect it, then send us a check. The other problem with the taxation of property tax, relying solely on property tax, there's a large percentage of properties that are not taxable in Beaver Falls, which puts then a burden on the current tax properties. So like I said, there's a lot in the mix that needs to be looked at. But on the financial end, the biggest one would be a full-time accountant, tier 1, tier 2 here, 40 hours a week, working to get this, budgets and knowing the cash flow of the city. Because again, like I said, as a business, I've never heard of a business having that much, a budget of 7.7 million with a part-time accountant 3 days a week or 2 days a week. That's, I think is a bad situation.
Thank you.
Has the city looked into that?
What we're planning on doing next year, the part-time accountant, we're in this interim period where she's planning on retiring. So by July 1st of next year, there will be a tier 1 or tier 2 accountant hired to start that transition, to start.
I guess you're next, huh?
Thanks, Kevin. George.
Doug,
Got that out of the way.
I kind of agree with Kevin. That's where I see the major weakness being in the structure of the city right now is in the financial department. I can't say enough about, how deep he's dug into this and what a nice job he's done to figure out where the leaks are. I mean, he's just done a tremendous job. I think that some of the things that I would like to talk about more than knowing that is some of the things that you guys might not know. Doug, you probably do, but the structure of the city. A lot of stuff's been changed. I came in as mayor 7 years ago, and the only department head that we have now that is the same is Mark Stowe. And he's also been moved from just over the fire department to now the code department. So we realigned the structure of Beaver Falls. Pat's new in the street department, Joe's new in water pollution control. Doug, you've had Mark, and he's great. Mick, the new city manager. One of the proudest things I've done is appoint him, and he and I got started. We went, okay, let's do it. Let's get it done. And that's what we're trying to do. One of the other bright moments of my life was I hired Bethany. And Bethany Williams is just obviously, as you all know, amazing. So I think that the city has been kind of restaffed, so to speak, with different people in charge. And right now I can tell you that I think the camaraderie in the city is way stronger and higher than it's ever been, which is really, really good. So I don't have a lot that I'd like to change other than that. I think that, you know, we can go through, or you guys can go through a third-class city code and pick it apart and find stuff that, you know, that is good and stuff that's not good. I'm sure, you know, Debbie has said you don't have to use it all. We don't have to change the whole thing. You know, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. I think things are going real well now. I think that we've got more of a grip on it than ever. We're through the year financially, correct? Pretty much.
I mean, we'll do okay. You know, I mean, this is the first time since I've been on council. December 31st is when the TAN loan is always paid off. The payment will be walked over to the bank tomorrow, so it will save us some interest. We're borrowing less money on the TAN loan for next year. Our last two budgets, 2019, we finished about 72,000 positive, 124. So I think we're going to be close, but we should be above water at the end of this year. Next year, I don't know. But like I said, I mean, you know, we're not talking, that may not seem like a lot of money to everybody, but when it was negative for so many years, I think it's definitely a thing. But the problem is, as our costs are increased, that little bit of wiggle room that we have is going to evaporate very quickly. So,
And this year we will be on Tuesday presenting a balanced budget for council's approval, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really don't have a whole lot more to say. If anybody wants, like I said, any questions, I'm more than happy to answer any of the ones that I can.
You know, since I got this thing, this financial management executive summary, I think that's the grassroots. On page, there are some recommendations, 2 pages of recommendations. And have you had a chance, has the city had a chance to look at those?
yeah, we've looked over all the.
Okay, did you like any of them? Or did you-
Well, I mean, the financial, like I said, I mean, it's also recommended that someone needs to look at the financial, you know, situation, you
The
know.
first thing they mentioned in there, I believe, was hiring a full-time accountant, what you mentioned.
Yes.
But I was just kind of curious to that. And then the other thing from here was they had mentioned 1% growth, and then there's like 2.9%, you know, deficit spending, which from your initial presentation way back when, obviously that can't go on. And what your thoughts are, is the revenue change at all for this year or the coming years?
I mean, COVID has affected us. I mean, you know, that's that. And then I'll put it right on the table. The only thing that saved us this year was a grant that we received from the county. You know, $200 and some thousand. That's the only thing that made us solvent for this year. Without that grant, we would have been negative. You know, our obligation with the TAN loan was, you know, money was put away, which was never really done before.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, put away in phases so that we knew that we wouldn't have this big amount that we had to come up with. But the grant is what saved us this year. Numbers were down, of course, you know, through some mercantile, stuff like that. Earned income was off a little bit, but overall, it did not affect a great amount. But like I said, every time there's a deficit in a income, that hurts at the bottom, end of the year.
And I think, not to jump ahead, but while I'm talking about, is the home rule charter would allow us to go to part-time police force and fire department. That's myself personally, I don't want to see that.
Well, not to interrupt you, but the fire department already has part-timers. There's already 2 to 3 positions that are part-time. And those part-timers save the city approximately $60,000 as opposed to hiring full-time. And home rule charter, in my opinion, was never designed, and that was not what we were putting forward, is to eliminate full-time positions or anything like that. I mean, that's a whole new theory. And if I go over my 3 minutes, give me another 3 minutes here. But the part-time positions would help. I think this year, the police department has finally got a little bit better grasp on overtime. By hiring, an officer, you have to look at what you're spending for overtime. By hiring an officer, what that officer is going to cost, is that going to, minimize the overtime. So we've implemented that, so that's kind of helped with the overtime. But if we had part-timers, and my theory on the part-timers, and some of the part-timers move up and they become full time firefighters. My thing is, it's a vetting, it's a way to vet employees. You get a police officer, he's part-time, you can watch, his growth or his demise or whatever. So you're not, hiring somebody and then all of a sudden it's a police officer that you may not want. So that's one of the things. And like I said, part-time does save the city. It's a proven track record in the fire department that it does save the city money. So if we could implement it in the others, the problem is more in negotiations, in the collective bargaining through the unions. The fire department, like I said, they accepted that years ago. Police department, whenever it comes up again for negotiations, and the steel workers union, that needs to be something that I believe needs to be brought to the table. But that's not the main purpose that I see for the home rule charter.
I'm more than happy to speak to that if you'd like me to. As the police department, the part-time policing is not a good idea. It's not a good idea at all. There's many reasons why. Training is one of them. But right now, as everybody's aware, being a police officer isn't one of the most popular jobs. It used to be everybody as a kid wanted to be a cop. You want to be a cowboy, you want to be a cop. Well, now people don't. We're getting situations where Allegheny County Police Department a couple of years ago needed like 75 officers between people that were retiring and just what they needed to fill in. They got applications for 45. They hired them all and they were still 30 short. We usually get a decent number of applications here. We just did a test and we got 7 guys, 2 dropped, and went to 5. We lost 2 in the physical agility. So now we got 3 guys on our list. The part-time people, I won't mention, I can, but I won't mention the municipalities that are using part-timers. They don't want to come to work. And most of the guys that are part-time right now, because the full-time policing is in need, there's not hardly any part-time guys available. They're taking the full-time jobs. It's kind of a mess out there for the police right now.
Well, that's one of the reasons why I tried to get on this commission, because I didn't want to see that happen. Because I'm a big fan of both departments. I think the city is really a benefit for the city. And I wouldn't want to see, because I heard that, what's going to happen in an attempt to save money. You'll go to a part-time fire department, police department, and just thinking part-time for me, not knowing the ins and outs of it, my thinking was, well, that's going to hurt the city. And I didn't want to see that happen.
I mean, I would never be for any department being part-time as much, but I feel that part-timers could supplement the need, especially when you look at, as I said, again, you look at the numbers, you look at where your budgets are overrun. Overtime is one of the big things, and that's, you know, you can't, I mean, you can cut some things out of the budget, but there's certain things that are the skeleton of that budget that can't be taken out. And overtime is one that needs to be, you know, looked at and considered.
So I don't want to take Gary's big money.
And in my opinion, real quick, anything that we would save on the budget, which I think is key, it's a necessity to save money. But I think we would lose it in the quality of policing that we have a lot. I really do. We have the most respected fire department, police department, at least in the county, and further out than that, we got some really good people. So,
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, Okay, I'm not gonna repeat what George and Kevin have been talking about for the last few minutes. I'm gonna give you my take on what I think the home rule charter should be. And I don't look at this as fixing today's problems. I'm also looking 30 and 40 years down the road. If it goes to home rule, we have to make sure and have assurances that things that we've developed today for good don't get destroyed. And what I mean by that is flexibility. We need flexibility in revenues with the income, earned income tax and the real estate tax. Right now, there's no flexibility. There's a limit on the real estate tax, there's a limit on earned income tax. And you come into a situation where you're up against the wall on both of them, and it puts the city in a hard spot. So I'd like to see flexibility in both the real estate taxes and the earned income taxes. At the same time, I agree with the reorganization. I think the city needs a full-time finance officer to run everything from bringing in the income through the treasurer's office to paying the bills at the end of the line. So I would be in favor of that reorganization. In addition to that, I think when we create, if we do the reorganization, we need to create very stringent and requirements and qualifications for the people who hold that job, so that it never becomes a political appointment. You have to have qualifications to be able to be the city manager, you need qualifications to be the finance officer. We also need, I think, to specify exactly what we expect of the finance department. For example, should we have 40 financial statements that have to be published in 15 days at the end of the quarter, those type of things. If you don't put it in, they might get forgotten about, and that destroys the whole purpose of trying to monitor the finances. Things like codification, that needs to be specified in the home rule charter. Otherwise, it may not get done. So we need minute details like this. We have to be very specific and put those in, not only for today, but for the next 40, 50 years, or whatever it is. We've been chartered since 1928. So, I mean, this home rule charter, if it would go through, could be here for 100 years. We don't know. So we sort of have to think about that as we're putting in rules and requirements into the home rule charter.
Okay. Any other questions?
I want to thank all three of you for doing a good job on getting right to the point with your answers. I do have another question, but just like last time, I don't want to be the only person asking questions. So Regina, you want to ask one more time if anybody else wants to weigh in? And if not, then I'm ready to go again.
I think we're ready for you to go again. Just stay unmuted.
Okay, so the other thing that both Debbie and Michael Foreman have talked to us a good bit about is taking a look at a little bit of a more, what I think would be maybe a little bit more of a modern style, a more professional style of structure that would keep the council out of the day-to-day management of departments, to make it's pretty much what we have right now with, as George, you did a good job of describing that, with Mick being over all of the departments. But I think what Debbie and Michael are saying, we want you to take a good hard look at this idea that the council would be a policy setting group, and the manager would be in charge of enacting that policy and really over the day-to-day operations of the city. Now, we're not far away from that, but let me just say, you know, when I came in as a council member, and I've used this example with the committee before, you know, I wound up being the head of public safety, the fire department and the code department. And I really don't have firsthand knowledge of the fire department, wasn't a volunteer fireman or anything like that. And code and all the code issues one way or the other, I don't know that. So you know, in terms of the day-to-day management, I don't think I helped a tremendous amount in both of those departments. Now, thankfully in fire, we have Chief Stowe, and thankfully he's now head of the code department. So that's improved that whole thing. Well, on the other side, you look at Kevin. Kevin has brought, as George said, has brought great skill to the financial management piece because he is a business owner, and he dug in and really has done a fantastic job there. So in that regard, the city has benefited from a council member who has the particular skill set that he has, getting involved in the nitty-gritty of how the finances go. So it's a little bit of it's a tough question, but I know we've talked about that. So Jerry's been involved in those discussions, so we don't need Jerry's input, but Kevin and George, maybe George, I'll let you weigh in first since I let Kevin go first last time. And then Kevin, are there things in the structure? George, you kind of alluded to it, but then I think you were saying, and I don't disagree with what you were saying, I think there's great camaraderie now, but there's great camaraderie now, but would you see things structurally, and how would you react to that?
The structure that we have, like you said, is not far off what you're talking about. One of the things when we look at those type of situations is this isn't the first time the city has been tempted with home rule. When I first came on council 13 years ago, Richard Janis was the city manager. He had done an early intervention study, and he used that study to go 180 degrees the other way, try to run the city into a hole, take over as the city manager under home rule, and he would essentially run the city. The only thing was that it was apparent what he was doing and he got caught. So that was the end of the first time home rule was spoken of. The one thing that I think is most key in this is when you try to figure out what you want to do with the structure, we need to remember that the people that are here now aren't always going to be here.
Right.
Mick Jones won't always be the city manager.
Right.
I won't always be the mayor.
Right.
Kevin's not always going to be the finance guy. So if you get the wrong guy, if you give the city manager a lot of power, like it end all do all power. If you get the wrong guy in there and you get like a Richard Janis, you know, we're in big trouble. So right now with Mick Jones sitting there, we can do anything we want to because that guy's going to drive the bus the way it should be driven. And he's not going to drive it into a hole. So I don't know. That's something that home rule, I think really the commission needs to look at real hard, you know, how you want to put together, you know, the power structure and be involved. It's like you said, we're not far off that right now. Mick is stern believer in the rank and file. I mean, the, word I'm looking for. Chain of command, thank you. See that, we work together well. And that's the way we do it. I mean, we may talk about a different, maybe your people, the public safety, you know, we're talking about the code office or whatever. And, you know, we kind of talk through that. And when it's time to do anything that is over and above, I mean, he worked with Mark Stowe and Dave Johnson, you know, on a daily basis. But if anything important is going on, we always bring in and include the people that are in charge, the council people in charge of that department. So really, he does work that all the time with, you know, not necessarily the council people, but, you know, the on hands of the people that are in and out of here every day. But if something major comes up, then, you know, we go through chain of command and do it correctly. But I would safely say that, you know, that he runs the city right now, but he's got checks and balances. You know, we talk a lot about, you know, what about this direction? Unfortunately, he and I are very much of a like mind. So the direction of the city hasn't been hard. And, you know, the more people we bring on that see the direction, like Kevin, it makes it better. So
let me make one other, can I make one comment? Because I think that what you just said is very interesting. The other thing that can happen though, in a commission form of government is you could get council people who are not sensitive to allowing the manager to manage. And they can say, basically, the public works person can say, stay out of my department, you're not going to direct my people. Or stay out of the police department and the fire department, you're not going to have anything to do. And I've seen that happen where a newly elected council person comes in, and really because of the structure of your government and the fact that each council member heads a department, they can just be disruptive too, because they can actually, you know, prevent the city manager from doing the things that maybe need to be done. So that's just the other side of that coin, I guess.
Thanks, Debbie.
And I guess we've talked about this before too, but the key is that if you're an elected person, then you serve your term. And if you are the city manager, you serve at the pleasure of the city, correct? So the city manager has even more, we as citizens and as a council or whatever, you have more control over that person than you realize. Even if you are the head, you know, if you give up that power as a head of a department or whatever, because ultimately it's your decision whether or not they continue to serve. So you could get a terrible city manager, but you can fire a terrible city manager. You can't unseat a council member until the next election.
Exactly. So, it's almost impossible. So yeah, they get to
right.
serve out their term no matter how badly they're performing their job. Yeah, that's exactly right.
City managers are harder to get than police officers.
That's what he was. If I can make a comment, this ties in what I was trying to say with having very stringent and specific qualifications for a position like city manager. You know, if they fill the qualifications, then you assume that they have past experience and know what you're doing. The council always has the right to dismiss if they don't feel that the city manager is doing the job properly. And then another comment talking about the commission forum. I've seen in the past where certain departments were exactly what you're describing, Doug. One of them being in the police department, and there was so much turmoil for 3 or 4 years that I thought the police were going to mutiny at one point in time, and you just can't have that. And that was just because of one person happened to be there. So that's my comment on it.
Yeah, I've seen people run for office just to get back at somebody in one of the departments. So it's, you know, hopefully it'll never happen there, but I have seen it happen.
That is what happened. that is what happened.
So should interviewing and hiring and firing and employee discipline, should that remain as a power of council, or should that remain with the city manager totally, or solely with the city manager?
It should probably stay with the department head more than the city manager. I think the city manager would direct a situation, but would work very closely with the department head that is in charge of that department.
Yeah, typically, the charter might give some direction on that. For instance, the charter may say department heads are appointed and removed by the city manager with the consent of council or with the approval of council. So that happens. You see that kind of language a lot.
Mhm.
But to be honest, with employees, you're probably better off having the manager, department heads, because they can be trained and sent to professional training about how to deal with discipline, terminations, recruitment, all of those kinds of things. There's a lot. Those are actually the most expensive lawsuits that municipalities pay out, have to do with the way employees are handled in one way or another. So there's, you really want your professionally trained manager and department heads to really handle most of that kind of stuff. But you do see a lot of times that the council at least has the ability to consent or approve the department directors. The manager usually recommends and they consent. Approve those. That's
Now,
usually the
and there's
language.
another layer. There's another layer to that too, because there's, I mean, I'm assuming, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's like the police department and the fire department are going to be run differently than the code office, because there's a civil service commission that appoints.
Exactly.
Right. So like, it's not like uniformly set like the way it is. You know, you can't say like, oh, the city manager is in charge of all hiring, firing, and discipline and whatever, because different departments are governed differently.
Yeah, and again, under the personnel clause of your charter, it usually says that. It usually says that you have to follow whatever the third class city code has in terms of civil service regulations. Yeah, absolutely.
Good work. This is great information. I'm very happy. Kevin, you want to weigh in at all?
My only concern is that if you get a bad city manager in there that has too much power, as in the past, there's the checks and balances for council. It's not that easy, again, for council to come to a point and say, you know what, we're going to get rid of our city manager. It's not like there's a, you know, you pull out the yellow pages and there's a whole ad for people who wanting to be city manager. So it takes time, and by the time that does happen, the problems that have been created in years past are there in front of you. So as far as the current thing of council, I like the way the council is, because we are the ones that are elected by the citizens of Beaver Falls. We answer to the people of Beaver Falls. The city manager, if they have this absolute power, or, you know, and we're just policymakers, the citizens aren't going to say, oh, well, you know, that we understand that your form of government, that it's the city manager that has to take the slack. It's going to be the people that you have elected that are taking the slack. That's why I think that those people need oversight on different places. But finding the key person for each position is a challenge. And I'm not going to say that that's just the way it boils down to. But, and then, like I said, if you have one council member that is the head of a department that is causing chaos in that, you can easily have a reorganization and move them to a different department. So, like I said, so if you take that away, that power to change that's my concern. One person having too much power.
With respect to the issue of the city manager and the either actual or perceived reality that that individual has too much power,
it's incumbent upon the city council to work closely with the city manager and to assure that there is transparency and accountability, responsiveness, follow-up with respect to the actions that the manager takes, again, based upon the policies and decisions that council makes, that the manager implements and administers and manages. So council is what I call, council are the supremes, because they decide who to appoint as a manager based upon a specified criteria that is not only spelled out in the Home Rule Charter, but also in the city manager ordinance, as well as the administrative code, which is a supplement to the Home Rule Charter that's adopted by ordinance, so that there's continuous, and what I'll call, and I heard the term earlier that I used last meeting, a symbiotic relationship with regard to the need and dependency and the working relationship that council has with the manager and vice versa. So it's important at the front end of any type of recruitment and selection process that there be a merit selection of a manager based upon specified criteria, experience, expertise, and a very intensive due diligence with regard to background check, with regard to various aspects of a manager's history and where they've worked, so that the manager does not become all-being and all too powerful and omnipotent and whatever adverbs you want to use. And any good manager will always know that they can be reined in by city council, because it's city council that makes decisions to hire and fire and discipline and to guide, direct, and to manage the manager. But at the same time, not get too involved with the day-to-day activities. Council as a body would work with the city manager. So I often hear that, and this is normally by citizens that don't like home rule, that the manager is just too powerful, has too much authority, and can do too many things. But again, it all comes down to what I'll call triangular relationship between council, the manager, and the manager relative to the department heads, and how it all relates to providing services to the citizens, being responsive, accountable, and transparent.
Michael, one of the things that I think that you run into, the city manager situation, as you have stated, is a situation where they do serve at the pleasure of council. And at any time, we could remove a city manager and move somebody else in. However, like I said before, like police officers, they're not a dime a dozen. They're not, standing on every street corner. One of the things that we had here, and I won't go deep or name names, but we let a city manager go, actually fired him, and we didn't have a city manager. So what do? Somebody on council at that point said, well, I know a guy that was a city manager and he lost his job. So he wants to be a city manager and he'll do it for $25,000 a year. And you're like, oh, really?
I'm not sure what you're getting for that.
Kind of what you got.
That's a red flag.
And if you let that guy go because council wasn't happy, what do you got next?
Well, I don't know, I don't know that our task, the commission, as to decide whether the city needs to go to a home rule charter. It's not how we select the city manager. I don't think Mick's going anywhere for a while.
I hope not.
I hope not too. So I don't know. I think we've gotten off.
Now, that is actually, if the it moves forward and it gets voted to be like, yeah, let's go ahead and draft a charter, we would have to look at the structure when we start to
Would we have-
compose
I
the
don't know
charter.
that we would, but council would have to look.
Believe Debbie, Michael,
You guys have.
we have to look at that, right?
That's
Yeah.
correct. government's-
Typically, yeah. Go
The
ahead,
Government
Michael, I'm sorry.
Study Commission, that's okay.
Mhm.
The Government Study Commission is to primarily look at the government structure, organization, and the function not only of the elected officials, but of the appointed officials that council, again,
Okay.
manages. So that is a primary focus of a Home Rule Charter. Structure, organization, and the function of the individuals that are either elected and or appointed. But it always goes back to the elected officials and the ability to put in place the right people for the right job with respect to their effectiveness, their efficiency, their productivity, their experience, their expertise, their people skills, etc. There's a whole broad spectrum of skill sets that the right type of manager at the right level of compensation that is committed to the community, that takes ownership not only of their decisions, but of the implementation of it over time, is the ideal situation. So it's the Government Study Commission that is primarily responsible to put in place a draft Home Rule Charter that deals and focuses primarily on that as the nucleus of the Home Rule Charter document.
And if you look in our folder that Bethany put together, and there are documents that Michael sent us
Mhm.
that shows the different structure versions. So he shows us what it looks like in, I think, 3 different ways, the structure.
It's a chart that looks at what you have now, what a council manager form of government would look like, generally speaking, and what I call a mayor council manager form of government, which would be something like the city of Pittsburgh has, which is a strong mayor, city council, but city of Pittsburgh does not have a manager. They have a chief of staff. But the primary example could be Allegheny County, the chief elected executive, you have a county council, and you have a county manager. So that's what that's what I call mayor or executive council manager form of government. But looking at your current form of government as commission, a slight pivot would be operating under a council manager form of government, where the role of council would change slightly and the role of manager would change slightly with regard to that slight pivot. So it wouldn't be a sea change that I think people would I think generally understand it more readily than a strong mayor council form of government.
Yeah, and another example would be, right now, the third class city code has in the code an elected controller, an elected treasurer. What your new charter could, for example, do is combine those positions and basically say you want a chief financial officer and then set qualifications. So that, like Kevin said, it might need to have a qualification that they have a strong governmental accounting background, period. It might have language like that, but you could actually make that part of the code so that nobody can really change that. You would have to have a CFO, and that CFO would have to meet certain standards. And you see that a lot in in new charters.
Another thing to think of, right now is Mike said that, Mick's probably not going anywhere. No, he's not, I don't think, because he's Mick. But anytime you get a superstar, you can always lose one too. When you have the Bethany Williams out there and you've got the Mick Joneses out there and they're like at the top of their game and everybody in the county's looking at them, not only do you have them quit or you get rid of them, but you can always lose them in a different fashion as well. So it's, I think it's a tedious situation as you put, the power struggle together, the way you want the power.
Well, the Home Rule Charter institutionalizes the structure, organization, and function of the respective parties, to the extent that it becomes what I'll call a imprint, or it becomes embedded in the way the city government operates. And the way to change it would be through a referendum that the voters would approve or not, based upon what they believe to be a better option or a better form of government. With that said, regardless of whether you have a home rule community or not, municipal managers are the type that, yes, they do come and go. And yes, they are sometimes looking for a job that becomes a stepping stone to a more prestigious, more highly paid, and I think more responsible type position. But this happens everywhere with regard to the nature of the position. So ideally, and in actuality, you want the Mick Joneses of the world to land in the city of Beaver Falls and to, put their plant themselves and to be there for years to come. And a lot of that depends on the working relationship and the support that the city council provides to that manager with regard to working together as a partnership, working together as a team. Unfortunately, I work with communities that there's inherent conflicts, and I'm saying this tongue in cheek, but sometimes the manager and the governing body, they have to merge with themselves so that they're working off the same page and not competing with each other. But a lot of times it becomes personalities rather than issues or ability to do the work.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to throw this out there. I kept hoping someone from the public would show up in the Zoom, but at this hour, I'm thinking that's not going to happen. But I think everyone is aware of different comments scattered throughout social media. And since they're not here to address it, I'm just going to throw it out there. And as I said, the answers are going to be recorded so we can just put the video and they can see the answers, even though they're not here to ask themselves. But it's, been said on social media, city officials can't be trusted, number one, that they do backdoor deals anyhow. So we should just let the city go into Act 47. So if anybody would like to address why that is such a horrible first, wrong impression, number one, and a bad idea to just say, let the city go into Act 47, and just explain why it's really a bad idea to just let that happen.
I mean, as far as going into Act 47, as having a business in this town, invested heavily in this town, living in this town, my daughter has a business in this town, Act 47 would be a detriment. You look at other communities that are in Act 47, they don't have growth, property values have dropped drastically. So yes, I have a financial stake personally and financial responsibility being a council member to see that we don't go Act 47. That would be the nail in the coffin for the city of Beaver Falls. We have turned the corner and there is light at the end of the tunnel. There is stuff coming back into Beaver Falls. So Act 47 is not the way to go, in my opinion. And as far as backhanded deals, everything we do is public, in front of the council, voted on and passed. Everybody in this community has the right to be present at a council meeting. If they have an objection to what we're doing, come to a council meeting and let's hear it.
Thank you.
I think one of the things we don't do, I don't know that people know the mayor or they know me, and what good work they do for the city. I don't know that we publicize our management team. And I think maybe we should try and do that. I don't know. I mean, I don't know how many city managers around have the 20 years or so of police, being a policeman. That's a bonus. Part of I just don't. I don't know that we blow our own horn enough.
Well, his qualifications are amazing. If you had somebody go, well, he's police chief, what would he know about being the city manager? Trust me, when he learns how to be the city manager, you'll never find one that's better or was better. I can't say enough about that man. He took it by the horns.
Well, masters in human resource management help,
So
I had to throw that out there.
the answer to Act 47, as a mayor, it will kill any of our growth. We will have no growth. No new business is going to come to town in a city that's in Act 47. So we're going to be in big trouble there. And one of the things with the citizens that, that make these false accusations, you can come sit in one of my council meetings anytime, and if somebody wants to buy something out of a repository or somebody has some kind of a complaint, they come, usually it's cats or, whatever you want to talk about next. But nobody comes. Nobody comes and says, there's no transparency here. We're calling you guys out. Nobody does that. You just make stuff up and post it.
Exactly.
If you want to know, like you guys, you're learning what goes on at Beaver Falls. You're learning who the players are and what they do. A lot of other people should know that, but don't. That it's just assumption. And we all know where assume goes, right?
Yep.
Well, it's like, there's nobody here.
Yeah. And on social media, you see nobody's tuned in, and so I would really like everybody, would we get the link from Bethany for the YouTube? If we could just really blast this out to social media where people can actually, then that would help them. They could see, they'll hear what each one of these gentlemen do. They'll hear the plans for finances. So if we could just, as a commission, because it's also our charge to educate, if we could just take the link to our YouTube channel and just start bombarding social media with them. I think that might help maybe, but then again, we can't force anybody to watch it, but at least we did our part to try to, here's the answers. Let's have people look at it.
So I agree completely with you, Regina, because I think it's pretty critical. I mean, obviously there's a huge lack of engagement from the public at the moment anyway with all of this. And there's also a lot of good reason for that. There's a pandemic, people don't want to come out. And I don't think even if we post this link, I don't think a lot of people are going to sit through an hour of us talking either. I think, we've got to come up with some catchy graphics and meme type of stuff basically that's shareable and that creates discussion. But I mean, I spoke with some people, just recently talking about, so a lot of people, it seems like, are opposed to home rule based on the fact that they don't want their taxes to go up, or they feel like that's they don't want to pay more. But I think what people have to understand is that they're going to pay more one way or another, right? So one of the things that I learned recently is if we go into Act 47 and if our fire department becomes volunteer, for example, versus the paid fire department that we have, every single person that owns a home or a business, our insurance rates are going to go up. So it's not like we have a choice about, whether or not we're going to spend more money. We have to spend more money if we want the things that we want. But it's just going to be, who are we paying and for what end, and I think things like that, those people need to understand that it's not, we can't just have what we have and expect somebody else to foot the bill for it. We have to come up with a way to make this sustainable. And so I think things like that, those are the types of things that I think people, I mean, and I'm sure, Kevin, I'm sure you have plenty of other examples of things like that would happen if we decided to, if we didn't change anything, we just left everything alone, what would happen and how would those things affect, everyday citizens? I think they'd be very disappointed to find out that it would not be, the state doesn't come in and say oh, you get to keep everything you have and we'll pay for it now. Yeah.
Act 47 for policing. Look it out. They actually have a police officer there that is on duty. He can't write a traffic ticket. He can't arrest you. He can't do anything as a police officer but fill a hole in the lineup. You can't do anything.
Right.
They're police officers, they're down, they got part-times, they got full-times, they can't get anybody to come, nobody wants to work overtime, they're making about $10.50 an hour. They burnt to the ground. Nobody wants Act 47. Nobody. That's a bad thing. So, I mean, that's your policing part of it. But, you know, all the, like Kirsten said, you know, all your services could go up insurance wise because you don't have the quality of people that you had in a third class city or home rule as it may be, but kind of a mess. You know, the Act 47 is not any place anybody needs to go. It's not going to help anyone, that's for sure.
The Department of Community and Economic Development that I work for put in place the Strategic Management Planning Program so that we could work with communities in a rather
We froze
diligent
again.
way to keep communities from going into Act 47. And Beaver Falls is to be commended for taking that step to participate in this program, that they now have a report that provides some very solid and implementable and very necessary recommendations to help the city ward off slipping into an Act 47 mode where you would be on your knees financially, that Act 47 would be the only option for you to choose. So we hope from the department's perspective that you succeed, not only with the recommendations that you're going to implement that will be coming to my department soon in the form of a grant request, one of which was a recommendation for home rule. So thus, here we are. And home rule does offer the opportunity to strengthen not only your structure, organization, and function, but also your management and administrative capacity to operate as a viable, ongoing operation.
I think Jerry's been trying to say something for like 10 minutes.
The only comment is that opinion and rumors aren't fact.
Right.
And they have fact, and then they should present these facts before they just go out and start making opinions. In a city of 8,000 people, you can have the streets lined in gold and somebody's going to complain. So we can't let them govern what our objective is to do. So that was my comment.
Good comment. Well, as the hour is getting late, are there any other questions or comments?
I would like to ask Kevin and George one more. And Nick as well. Kevin, I would assume that you're in favor of the home rule charter.
From a financial standpoint, purely financial, it makes sense. You know, I'm just using that term, you know, for fun. But for a flat tax base for the revenues, in order to perpetuate the city, even at a minimal amount that we're trying, home rule charter is the only way that I foresee that we can sustain keeping the city of Beaver Falls with services that the citizens want without, you know, anything else. I don't think we can do it.
Hey, Kevin, could I ask, I remember when you were doing your meetings before we had this election, you had a really good breakdown in your PowerPoint of how the finances could look with what changes from the tax structure. And I remember it not being super painful as a taxpayer. I know people are really concerned about this. Would you mind sharing that with us again, maybe emailing it to me and I can put it in our Google Drive and sharing it with everybody, just so we can see and have some words to put to what people are saying to us.
And like I said, I don't have it in front of me, but going off of memory, like I said, I have a whole breakdown that I thought, you know, there'd be more questions about where our money comes from, blah, blah, blah. But just a real quick synopsis, to raise a mill of taxes, 1 mill of taxes generates the city $50,000 a year. So if we look at the deficit that Grassroots Solutions has talked about, even being conservative, those deficits in the years to come are going to be pretty high. So you're looking at, for every mill, $50,000, to, so you're looking at, 10 mills at $500,000. So that's 10 mills on your property tax to generate $500,000. By the earned income tax going up 0.5% would generate the city about $600,000. And just because you pay your property tax, doesn't matter if you're working or you have a high paying job or you have a low paying job, you pay your taxes, property tax. The earned income, like I said, most everybody understands this. If you're working, then therefore you would have more of an ability to have the money to pay the taxes. So the property tax being flat, and there's a big contention is what we can raise our property tax to. We're not close to being capped, that we keep hearing at 34, because we have debt service. If you look at the amount of debt we have in our bond and our other loans, there's a percentage of that can be taken out. So we do have the ability to raise 10 mils. Okay, so that puts us at like 44 mils. I don't want to pay 44 mils in tax, but like I said, out of my paycheck, I'm not really seeing that, so in that instance. So I mean, that's where the big advantage is from a financial end of it. And like I said, it doesn't put it on property owners, okay? Because if we keep taxing property owners, then it has a negative effect. If my taxes keep going up on my property, I'm not going to put money into my house. So then it opens up the whole thing that Doug knows of the blight. So it's a perpetual thing. It's going to be a balance somehow, but that would sustain us immediately $600,000, but then it would have to be still conservative and keep these budgets. I'm not saying raise our taxes $600,000. Hey guys, we have $600,000 to spend this year. No, I'm 100% against overspending. So I hope I answered your question, but I can email you, Bethany, that PowerPoint presentation.
For me, Mike, it's
Thank you.
financial as well. It's just financial. I think the city would run well. I think that it's running well right now, but the money's being issued. If that's the way that we have to do it, then that's the way we have to do it. But I don't think the whole thing's broken. You know what I mean? I don't think the whole system's broken. I think it's just the financial portion that needs to be figured out, and maybe home rule is the way to do that. But like I said, you don't have to throw it all away. You don't have to change the whole third-class city. Go in, look at the third-class city, what you like and what you don't like, and figure out what you need to change. We're here trying to let you know, what we think about, how the city works right now. And we seem to think that we have a handle on it. And we're moving it forward. We have people coming to town. They want to move their businesses here. Those are all good things.
Excuse me, in regards to the finances, we as a home rule commission, all we can do is provide flexibility. Between real estate, as far as finances, real estate and earned income tax. The hard decision, we're still going to be in council's hands. It's not on us.
I've heard that people look at us funny because we've gotten the city into financial situations. Well, we really did. The can's been kicked down the road. We're just now catching up with the can. But one of the things, if you're looking at financial misconduct, that we didn't have the amount of money that we should have. Well, in 13 years, we never raised the taxes because a lot of people in Beaver Falls can't afford to have their taxes raised. We're already up there pretty good. So was that irresponsibility by the council, or was that just a heart for the people?
I think you answered pretty much as Kevin and the mayor. I think if there's any time that the mayor, manager, and finance director work together and on the same page, it's down. And I agree with everything that they said. We meet pretty much to talk pretty much every day about this topic since we identified the issues within the finance. So if you answer your question with home rule, that's why we collectively agree that this needs to be researched and take a look at. So yeah, it's financial management is probably, from my perspective as a manager, that is our, lack of better terms, our weakest link in the the thing that's really taking away from so much more that we could be doing.
No further comments or questions?
I think I'm good.
Okay,
I'd like to say, I think it's time you took a vote. Being that it's the end of the year, and maybe with the beginning with the January meetings, you start section by section, looking at how you want the charter to be devised, and also send out a mass mailing to the Beaver Falls citizens, telling them this is what we've decided to do. And here's our first section of what we're going to study in January, and lay out the agenda that way, and give them an opportunity to appear at the meetings, to voice their opinion on the different sections, how they think that that should be constructed. Maybe that would diminish the conspiracy theorists that are in town.
well, we have one more round of interviews. We need the police chief and the fire chief for hopefully January 7th. And after we get some insight from them, then we can take your suggestion and run with it. But I think we need to speak with the police chief and fire chief before we start actually laying sections out.
Hey Deb, when will you be ready to put a survey together like you did in Newcastle?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the question. I heard my name.
I said, when would we be ready to put together a survey like you did with Newcastle?
We can do that at any point. Maybe it's something to put on the agenda in January if you want to do that.
Well, yes, we want to do that.
We discussed that.
Yeah, we did. I think we discussed it too early on is what happened. Yeah, we started trying to do a survey with the citizens and we didn't have enough information.
Yeah, I think, usually January, February, March is kind of slow. So people might pay attention a little bit more during those months.
Okay, any further questions or comments?
Comment? I see Neil McDowell there.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to tell Neil, congratulations. Welcome to the group.
And on that note, Neil, you have to get with Magistrate, Mr. Goodwald, as soon as you can and get sworn in, buddy. There he
Okay, I'm good.
is.
And thanks, Mike. I appreciate that.
Yep. Welcome, Neil.
Yes,
Thank you,
welcome.
Doug.
Welcome.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Okay, go get sworn in.
So I just walk in the office and just
I
get sworn
think you
in.
might need to make an appointment because he probably might have some hearings going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, just call the office and just tell him what happened and I'm sure he'll be happy to swear you in.
Okay, I will do that.
Thank you.
Just make
We
comment.
appreciate it.
I think he should call Paula,
Okay.
because she has a form.
Oh,
She has
okay.
a form to get an affidavit sworn in.
Did you hear Kevin?
What did he say?
He said first call Paula at the city clerk because
Yeah.
she has the form that you would need for Dirk to get
Okay.
sworn in. There's a form you have to have.
All right, I will do that tomorrow morning.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Neil.
Okay. I need a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Jerry motion to adjourn. He beat you, Doug.
So it's all right. I want to,
Michael seconded. You're just out.
yes, spread the wealth.
Well, thanks for hanging in there, everybody. It went a little long, but it was worth it. We got valuable information. And hopefully,
George,
if nothing
Jerry.
comes up, we'll have a police and fire chief next and we won't see each other. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, sorry, Merry
Merry
Christmas.
Thanks, everybody. Great
Is our
job,
next-
Regina.
Meeting the 7th.
The 7th of January,
7th of January.
hopefully.
Ooh, Kirsten's birthday.
Oh, we would
Oh.
have cake, but it might be virtual, so I don't know.
Virtual.
I'll send you all cupcakes or goodie bags.
And you did bring up having the memes and stuff. That's why you took that role as new social media person. I'm gonna look for some memes now. I'm gonna
Mhm.
Oh,
look
God
at
help me.
creativity, you.
Kirsten,
Don't look too
I can
hard.
help with the marketing. I can't manage it, but I can help.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that
I'm
idea.
counting on that, so don't worry.
Well, thank you, everybody. And don't forget, people who aren't virtual to eat up some of those cookies. And then Regina, could you take them to the box and I'll get it from you?
They were delicious. Oh,
Hold up, what cookie?
They got
yeah, I can
What
bring you
cookies?
actually,
Yeah.
I
Who
can
got
my
bring you the
cookie?
box tomorrow or Saturday when I come for my coffee.
Sounds good.
Okay.
I thought Jerry baked it.
Yeah, Jerry's taking credit for baking them. Okay.
Jerry.
Seems about right.
Yeah, I think we adjourned at 8:20. Nobody, but we did have the motion and we had the second, but I never gave an official time. So it was 8:20 and then we just started congratulating Neil and saying Merry Christmas. We are adjourned. We are adjourned a
adjourned.
minute ago and we started talking about Christmas.
Thanks, everybody. Merry Christmas.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Good night, everyone.
Send
Merry
me the link
Christmas.
as
Good
soon
night.
as it's ready, Bethany. I'm